most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. Assalamu alaikum. It's always a pleasure, they say, for many places that I may roam, but be it never so humble, there's no place like home. So praise be to Allah. It's a pleasure to have the honor to be able to speak to family. You know, I've been invited to speak to a lot of places, but it's no place like home. Well, today is America's birthday, and it has many meanings to America and different meanings. Today, America is 243 years old. And I had the pleasure of being with Father Clements, and he shared some wisdom that he learned when he was being trained as a priest. So I'm going to today sort of use that guidance that Father Clemens shared with me, that they taught him. And that is, I'm going to be quick, I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to be gone. You know, I told somebody, I said, look, when you get to be my age and compared to some of my elders and pioneers, I'm still a baby. They'll tell me that real quick. They say, how old are you? They say, oh man, you still wet behind the ears. and so I said, I've been a lot of places and seen a lot of faces. And so it means I got a whole lot of stories, right? And so America is 243 years today. But in the bigger context, America is still a baby. England is over 1,000 years old. France, 1,000, almost 1,500. Japan, 3,000 years old. So America is a baby. Well, you know, a toddler. I would say this, a toddler. And so we live in a time that, once again, like a toddler, America is faced with a whole lot of controversy. The flag, Nike, y'all heard, was going to put what they call the Betsy Ross flag on the back of his shoe. And they said, hold up. That was a racist time. There were slave owners. You can't use that, so they canceled that. So the far right says, wait a minute, that's our history. And so it says a window into the past creates a doorway into the future. So you got to look through that window to see how do you get into the future, because the future is going to evolve out of the present. So we're living in the past right now, with the past created. So America, they look, and yes, America started off very ugly. The first settlers came, and the first settlement was in 1607 in America. Then in 1620 came Plymouth Rock. And America started with people who came here was from prisons. They was religiously discontent. So they point out and say, America, they evolved with prisoners and rejects from the natural, normal society, they sent them over here to start America. And they say that accounts for America's criminal activities when it came to the Native Americans that was already here. And then in 1619, they started bringing in our ancestors that they had taken and brought in from Africa. So in 1852, they asked Frederick Douglass to speak on Independence Day. And he gave his famous speech to what is Independence Day to the slave. And it's one of his most favorite speeches that he did. And believe me, he took America to task. And that just tells you just out of slavery. And he escaped, he was born in 1818, and he escaped from slavery 20 years later, 1838. And his history alone, when he got north, he was actually trained as a ship caulker. But when he got north, he couldn't even work in his own trade because the Caucasians that was here, they refused to work with him, so he was forced to start to become an abolitionist. So they asked him to speak, and it's worth Googling to hear just the excerpt verse that some kill here. I'm not hearing sound. But when they asked him to speak, he broke fire from heaven. I remember Imam Mohammed said that Dred Scott, when he spoke, he out-preached the prophets of Israel. Well, if you hear Frederick Douglass speak, he indicted America for their hypocrisy. And he said it would disgrace a nation of savages the way America has treated the African Americans in this country. And so this is all a window into the past. And our leader, Imam Mohammed, was rightly wed. We took pictures the other day. They opened up, Osman opened up the door, and the Chicago Historical Society is doing a special on Muslims in Chicago, and they wanted to do a special on Muslim that was in the military. And so in doing this special on Muslims that was in the military, they wanted to shoot a picture, and they knew that the Muslim American Veterans Association was tied in with the Muslim community of Imam Mohammed. So they wanted to come out. They had an Arab photographer woman to call us, contact us to shoot the pictures. And she said, I want to shoot with a setting with you and some of the Muslim veterans with Imam Mohammed. So they was kind enough to open the mosque and let us in there to shoot the picture. And when we went to shoot the picture, Osman gave her a tour. She said, give me a tour. So Osman gave her a tour around the facility, and he got to the bookcase. He said, these was books from Imam Mohammed, and they went on the tour. So I didn't know that, but I looked at the books, and I knew I had to get his speech, so I looked at a book, and I went right to it. It said, no more slavery. No more slavery. I said, boy, I'm going to hide in the closet. And when they close the door, I'm going to be here all night. You know, my job when I came up as a little kid, on Saturday, everybody had their jobs, right? My job was cleaning out the bookcase. So that took me all day because I sit there and be reading all day. I couldn't get through the books, you know? And so, praise be to Allah, they established America. And so, we have a festivities that went on in Washington because we got a showman in the White House. So when it's time for the show, so on the 4th of July, I'm put on the grandest show, P.T. Barnum, the greatest show on earth, right? And not only does America look back through a window to see their past every birthday. Like many of us, we have a birthday and we start to reflect back where we came from, our past as toddlers and everything. We just sort of do a stroll down history, right? So they had this great display, and you know, he's Russia, they marches, military, cross there, and they then Korea, little rocket man, he marched his military troops. I'm gonna show him something, right? But he couldn't get a chance to show off his. So he said, well, I'll do something, okay? So this great big old show in Washington, D.C. So the honor is not only on the July 4th to honor the country, but to honor the military. The military. Why? Because America wouldn't be here, and most countries wouldn't be here without the military. Freedom, they say, is, I had to look up, I said, what's the difference between freedom and liberty? They say freedom releases you from bondage that you might have had that prevented you from doing something. Liberty gives you ability to do things going forward. And so when we look at the 4th of July and the Declaration of Independence was signed, they actually finished the document on July 2nd. On July 4th is when they signed it. And so the document itself was considered the birth date of America. But America was already at war. There's at war. That was the Second Continental Congress. The First Continental Congress is when they sit down and send a grievance to King George. And they said, let's talk. Well, King George, he said, okay, we will talk at the end of a bayonet and the end of a rope. So he sent 3 of his top generals with military and battalions to squash the rebellion. And this was already taking place because it was a whole, from 1763, at the end of the French and American War, Indian War, the process started. And it goes on down through the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party, and it just went all the way down to it finally accumulated with the king saying, look here, let me go down and just squash this. And so when people, the cry of freedom is what Allah has put inside the breast of the human being. To cry to be free from oppression. In our religion, oppression is worse than slaughter. So it got to a point with the pioneers and the colonists. They say, look here, you know, oppression is worse than slaughter. So they started throwing tea off the ship. You know, it actually burnt one of the English ships. So they looked at it trying to get King George's attention. He looked at it as open rebellion. And so when freedom is declared, and because you're tired of being oppressed and you're tired of something, then the oppressor says, you in rebellion. So now I have to send down a force to put you back into oppression. And so now you have to now fight. And Allah says in the Quran, fighting is a prescription. And it's often that you do not like that which is prescribed for you, but it's good for you. My mama told me the same thing when the bully ran me home. She said, this is your prescription, you know? Brother Abdul told me we grew up together. He said a bully, he said one of the bullies used to bully when we grew up in Robbins. He said, you know, he's over in the senior building. I said, let's go get him. He said he should take his money. I said, man, he's take your money. There's a whole tribe of y'all, man. He said his father gave him a pipe. And he said, this is what you do to the bully when he come to take your money. And guess what? This is a prescription with consequences. Because if he take your money again, I'm going to beat your butt, okay? So my mama told me, you better get out there. I came, we had a porch. I came out that house, you'd have thought you thought a superhero came out. I came out that porch and died. Into fighting is prescribed for you. The colonists didn't plan on, but England, the sun never set on the British Empire. That means all over the earth, wherever the sun rose, Great Britain, they owned territory. So they had the mightiest army in the world. They took the leadership from from Spain, when they defeated the Spanish Armada in the 1500s. So England was a powerhouse. They didn't intend on fighting that 800-pound gorilla, but they slapped it. And so now they didn't have no choice. So Paul Revere Road, right? The British are coming. Undoubtedly, some people said, I'm out of here. So this country was formed where the Quran said, how often have a small force vanquished a big one? And that's what happened. 7 years they fought. 7 years. And finally from 1776 to 1783, they caved in and the war was over. And so a window into the past gives us a doorway in the future. So not only do we celebrate the military, with everybody in the military, please stand up. Let's give them a big round of applause. Praise be to Allah. From the beginning, African Americans served in the military in this country. In the Revolutionary War, there was over 5,000 African Americans that served in the Revolutionary War on the side of the United States, and even more, some on the side of the British. Because the British said, look here, if you come fight for me, you free. That was a better offer than they had. So they made a veil offer, and after the Revolutionary War, some of the African American heroes, they end up going back, putting them back into slavery. And then they called them on them again in the War of 1812. Promised them again and sent them back into slavery. So there's a documentary, and I've got some, in a birthday party you bring presents. So I got some presents in that box down there. So I've got some copies that's educational only to give out if you want to know more about African Americans. And they asked, and they asked the question, first, would we fight as African American soldiers? Why would they ask that when we come from a people that was warriors? Because they were saying that a people, we came into this country in 1619. They started bringing us in the country. But by some accounts, they started taking us out of Africa in 1502. So for 117 years, where were we at? One in Africa, one in America. Well, 45% of the Africans that they took out of Africa went into South America, mainly Brazil and other places. 40% went into the Caribbeans. And only 15% came into the Americas. 15. So here you got a people enslaved for 117 years. It was a process. And so when the war started, now we're talking about over 200 years that we're incarcerated, you got the people enslaved. So the question started to be asked, were we really people? How come we didn't? And that's the question. How come they didn't overthrow us? How come? And we ask our own self that question, like the Jews asked, how did they just walk into the gas chambers? Why did we fight as a people? Could we fight? Would we fight? And that's the question they asked. Would African American soldiers fight? And then as wars began to evolve, they had to ask, could we fight? Could we fire planes? Could we drive a tank? But the big underlying